thanks so much for joining. I'm humbled that you too. Someone's too Minnesotan for that. All right. Well, that's great. Hopefully this is still helpful for you. My name is Eric. I'm the president of Jenson Studios. And you know what? I'm going to jump right into the deck here, and we'll do it that way, and I'll bounce back and forth. And I'm going to start a little bit with my background. Way back in the 90s, I've got a brother who's a year younger, and we grew up making a lot of movies together. And we used the old shoulder-mounted VHS camera, the family camcorder, and we would record the VHS. We'd use a boombox and movie soundtracks like Star Wars and Indiana Jones and Rocky and you name it. And we would have the boombox battery powered sitting behind the camera as we'd shoot our scenes. We could have a soundtrack. We'd edit with the rewind button. And we thought our movies were just incredible. We thought they were awesome and hilarious. And we'd sit and watch them with an audience, and we'd realize that our audience actually wasn't laughing where we thought they should be laughing, or they weren't as engaged as we thought they should be engaged. And so we realized our movies actually were pretty terrible. And what we did, though, is we thought about it. We thought about what makes movies that we like work, and we'd go back and keep making more movies, and we started to get a little bit better. So in the late 90s, when digital video became a thing, we learned Final Cut Pro. We started winning some film festivals in college. We won some film festivals after college, and we learned to tell stories that people like to watch. So now I'm the president of Jenson Studios. We're a creative video agency. We like to say that we make videos that people like to watch. And more than that, we'll help companies and people with a comprehensive video plan, with the creation of video or videos, and even the placement of videos across web, social, or even paid ads. And we've had the privilege to work with a lot of cool brands along the way. So let's dive right in, because 30 minutes is going to go by really fast. And then I'm going to bounce back to it, so to the face-to-face video and hop in. So please stay in that room. Thank you so much for coming in. But the power of storytelling. I want to start high level, because this is pretty interesting stuff. And it's gonna kind of enlighten the rest of the presentation, because this has to be the base, the core of how we think about story going forward. And research shows, and this is what's fascinating, that well-told stories release oxytocin. And what I mean by that is when a storyteller is telling a story that's very engaging, or what someone is watching a movie, a film that's really engaging, where you're captivated and captured in that story, what happens is the viewer or the listener gets lost in the story, and oxytocin is released in the body. And oxytocin is the neurochemical or the hormone that's responsible for forging empathy and trust. It's the same hormone that's released in moms when they have a newborn baby to form that great relationship between the mom and the baby. It's the same hormone that's developed in relationships between people that are long-term, that where there's trust, where it's different than the hormones that would excite you, different than the hormones that would that are fleeting, but it's the hormone that creates that lasting connection. And so it's fascinating that that's what is released in storytelling. And what happens is a bond is formed between the storyteller and the listener. And so now that listener trusts that storyteller, or is captivated by that storyteller, and that listener has an empathetic connection with the storyteller and vice versa. And now the story has the power to affect the behavior of that listener. And of course, we've seen this profoundly with social movements. We've seen this profoundly with lots of examples we could give out in the world. But in the context of your company, your startup, your ultimate goal is to change someone's behavior from doing what they're doing, so that they can understand that you have a problem, or they have a problem that you can solve, and you want them to adopt your product, your platform, your service. So there's going to be a behavior change that has to occur. You have to change minds to change behavior. and story has a radical power to affect behavior. So the true power of storytelling is empathy, that empathetic connection, that trust that can be formed between the storyteller and the listener. So real quick, high level, storytelling is how you can, in the context of your company, of your business, storytelling is how you convey a message, how you portray a product or a service. Your good stories will increase brand awareness. They'll create customer loyalty. They'll make the complex simple. They'll create connections. And I'm going to press through real quick before we get interactive here. So there's lots of research, lots of data that proves that video is necessary for growing your company, for growing your brand. And everyone seems to know that. There's lots of data that proves it. And it's only getting more and more important as video becomes the #1 medium for consuming information. But what I've observed over the years is that everyone knows they need a video. Big companies, small companies, startups, everyone knows they need a video, or they need a comprehensive video strategy. If I've worked with a lot of B2B companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies, but they've been in a business-to-business space for so long. They've done things a certain way, and video has not been a part of that strategy. And now it's well into the 21st century, and they're realizing that video is actually important for us too. So there's a lot of companies and a lot of startups that know they need a video or videos, but they have no idea how to do it well. And we've all heard the phrase, well, I don't know if you've all heard the phrase. If you've been exposed to the marketing community, you've heard the phrase that content is king. But I would say only good content is king, because bad content wastes your time, it wastes your audience's time. And I've seen, for example, people create a series of 20-minute long videos, like a video for 20 minutes of that person talking about a subject, and then create a series of additional videos like that, where they're just sitting there talking about a subject, trying to establish themselves as a subject matter expert. And what's happening? No one's watching that video, because who wants to watch a 20-minute video of someone that they don't know anything about? If it's Bill Gates, maybe. If it's, someone who's an established subject matter expert, maybe someone would take the time to watch 20 minutes of that person talking. But even then, not as many people will watch that 20-minute long piece of content as they might a 2-minute long piece of content from Bill Gates. So in that case, I would argue that person is training their audience not to pay attention to them. And so we have to ask the question, is the quality of your video so low that people associate your brand as one that doesn't care about how it's presented? And so when it comes to what is good content, production value is a part of it, but it's not always the most important, because we see a lot of people who are very successfully shooting stuff on an iPhone, but they're getting around the quote unquote low production value by having an engaging personality and concise messaging, and constantly touching their audience in a way that audience wants to be touched. But what's going to matter in that case is the story, the compelling story. So production value is important, and we're going to get into a little bit later why production value might be extremely important depending on the type of video you're trying to create and depending on the type of audience you're trying to reach. And when I say production value, I mean, like, does it look like an expensive video? Was there professional lighting? Is there actors? Was there high quality animation and all that stuff that looks like it took a lot of time and potentially a lot of money. But the compelling story is always going to be more important than production value. And I could give an example, and I'll just flip back for the sake of trying to stay connected with you guys too. Now you see me, right? Okay, good. So an example of how story is more important than production value, and that empathetic connection is more important than production value. We, way back in 2012, we had the opportunity to do a video for Stratasys. Stratasys is a 3D printing company based in Eden Prairie. Don't remember or I don't know how big they are now. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They're a relatively big player, one of the biggest players, if not the biggest player, in the 3D printing space for high-end production. Like they have 3D printers ranging from $5,000 to $1 million and everything in between. And so they sent us out to film a story in a children's hospital south of Philadelphia. And the story is about this little girl who was born with this rare condition where she won't be able to lift her arms by her own strength ever in her life. But this hospital had 3D printed an exoskeleton for her. And so they wanted to show how 3D printing, that innovation of 3D printing is being used in this innovative way. But the story we created, back in 2012, we were still, we didn't have the big expensive film cameras and equipment that we have today. But so we shot on really entry-level gear, like hundreds of dollars worth of gear is all. But we did this story that ended up going viral and ended up winning huge B2B marketing awards for Stratasys against the likes of Siemens and IBM, and won a bunch of content marketing awards against submissions from Google, from Disney, from Volkswagen, the biggest brands in the world. And when you watch the video, the production value, you can tell there wasn't huge money behind it. But what made it work and what made it powerful is the story starts out with this mom crying as she's recalling the moment she's giving birth. She gave birth to her daughter, thinking she's going to have a perfectly healthy daughter, because that's what all the ultrasounds showed, only to discover that she's got this rare congenital disorder called arthritis. Her doctors come in and tell her this phrase she's never heard before, but she'll never forget: arthrogryposis multiplex congenita. And so she's crying, talking about the trauma of that, and you're immediately, you're moved. You're immediately connected, and you can't help but now need to listen to the rest of the story. And so the story goes on a journey similar to, there'd be too much to get into in a 30-minute session on the hero's journey and the arcs and the acts of film. Film always has Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and you see that hero's journey throughout, and there's a lot of movies that are basically the same story retold in different ways because it works and because it's interesting. And that was the case even with this, case study, a little 3-minute testimonial video. Act 1, we're drawn in by this tearful mother who's now got this traumatic experience, and we need to see what's going to happen next. Act 2, we see the introduction and the development of this radical solution that might be able to change her life. And by the middle of the film, and by the end of the film, the little 3-minute case study, we're seeing the girl hugging her mom with these magic arms, she called them. The little girl called the exoskeleton her magic arms. And everyone involved in the story is tearing up at one point while they're recalling these incredible moments throughout this journey that they were on together. And I obviously, the video went viral, and so I don't know everyone that's watched it, but I've heard from a lot of people that they cry when they watch the video, and it's moving and it's powerful. And so there's that empathetic connection. Of course, that's a unique example. Not every story is going to be able to make people cry, but that's a radical example, I guess you could say, of how that story has drawn a lot of people in. And the result, because the story went viral, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's also interesting to talk about the power. If we're talking about the power of story, we can see how millions of dollars have been raised because of that particular story. We started I'm going to give the extreme Cliff Notes version. We started a nonprofit to get more 3D printed exoskeletons to kids with these rare conditions around the world. And then out of that spurned a for-profit organization called Abilitech. If you've been paying attention to the startup community recently, Abilitech recently won the Minnesota Cup. Abilitech is winning all sorts of awards with the female founder, because our executive director at Magic Arms, we authorized her to take the IP and not just address the pediatric market, but there is investment dollars, again, all because of the power of this story. There's investment money she raised at first 2.6 million, since she's raised more than $6 million to address not just pediatric populations, but adult populations like MS and stroke and spinal cord injury, other people that might lose the strength in their arms. And anyway, there's lots more to the success of Abilitech. They're expected to make $4 million in this next year of revenue. And there's lots more to their success than just the story, but it's the story that helped push things forward. So, so story, production value is important, depending. Story is what matters the most. Let me go back to, any comments or questions so far? Yeah.
So Eric, what about, obviously this is a great example, but what about companies that have made an impact, but maybe on kind of a less dramatic kind of situation? How would you make a video using storytelling for a company that, obviously everybody is out here to make a difference. I mean, that's why we founded our organizations, but on the kind of more of a smaller scale, like, I do recruiting, and I work with very small, I work with mostly pre-seed companies in the tech realm. And I could say, I've made a difference in the tech companies that I worked with, especially since they're small and, it helps them to get started up and whatnot. But I can't say that I saved somebody's life or something like that. So how would you write a story that's compelling for somebody that's maybe doing, for a company that's doing like B2B?
Yep.
What would kind of be the difference, maybe?
You're basically a couple steps ahead of where we're going to get to eventually, so that's excellent. And I'm glad that you brought that up, and then we can talk about that. I'm trying to decide, do we just skip to it for the sake of, I'm looking at the clock and we're already at 2:32. I'll press really quickly through a couple of slides, because for those who will be watching on YouTube, it might be important. But after the fact, or wherever these videos will be posted, I think YouTube, I'm not sure. And then we'll get to that. And then Jason, since you had the courage to come on too, I want to talk about your thing too. Find out how we can, what we can talk about there. So let me go back to the deck. So when you're wanting to decide what content to create, where do you start? And this is what a lot of people in a lot of companies, they have no idea where to start with their strategy behind the content. And for marketing experts, this next slide will be very familiar. And for anyone who's not a marketing expert but has done a little bit of trying to keep up with what's going on in the sales and marketing world, you're going to recognize this image, because I took it from a Salesforce deck. So this image, the new marketing funnel, becomes an hourglass. Let me just come back to you guys. So you see this hourglass. Now you're about to not see it, because you're going to see me. Is that familiar for you two? Have you seen that before? Or should I break that down a tiny bit? Oh, I can't hear you. Are you guys, did you mute yourselves, or did I do something?
No, that was me. If you can show it again, I just caught a quick glimpse of it.
Okay, so yeah, that's enough for me to know. Like, you'd either be really familiar with it or not. So I'm gonna do a high level breakdown, and I would encourage you guys to dig into that on your own. The whole idea of the hourglass, because that's going to inform your decision making for how to guide your customer to where you want them to go, in all layers of your marketing and sales. And it's a powerful tool that's used by a lot of marketing professionals that are crushing it. And so I'll do a really high level overview. Does it let me? No, when I'm going to presenter mode, it doesn't let me zoom in. So let me see. Does that? So here. So it's the idea of the funnel, where you're trying to, get people to know who you are with this engagement and brand awareness, identify the problem that you solve, And then you want them to start to look into you, evaluate if you're going to satisfy their requirements, justify, do they want to actually buy, purchase. Again, I'm just doing super high level, but you could go find seminars that are going to really dig into this and help you out a lot on this whole process. Then get to the purchase. And then in the old funnel, got to purchase and then boom, that's the win. But nowadays people are thinking a lot more long-term, and they're thinking, okay, how can I turn that buyer into a repeat customer, and then not just a repeat customer, but someone who's also going to, provide word of mouth and become an evangelist, and et cetera, et cetera. So this is, there's other kind of images to give that paradigm for the customer journey from someone going from the position of not knowing anything about you to the position of becoming, a great champion for your cause. There's concentric circles and other images, but for me, and for a lot of people, this hourglass is what makes the most sense, as far as just a logical, easy way to follow that journey, that buyer's journey. And so, in the context of where to start with video, if you can look at the sales and marketing hourglass, and if you're on your own or if you have a big team, you can break down, where do we need the most help? Is it people don't know anything about us, or is it they know about us but they're just not buying into the idea that we can solve their problems? Is it they know about us, they're buying our stuff, but then they're not staying happy, we're losing them, and they're mad after the fact, so we need to have some better customer support, et cetera, et cetera. So when you understand that, then that's going to inform your decisions for the type of video that you need, whether it's top of funnel, like brand awareness videos, or if it's evaluation, justification, or research where you need to have maybe some testimonials and expert interviews, or if it's retention and you need tutorials. And then if we have time, I can show how tutorials can also be top of funnel, helping to raise awareness and build your brand, depending on your particular company. And so hopefully that's a step toward answering your question, Megan. If you start there, then you can start. So what I haven't answered yet is, well, how do you get the powerful connection? Because you need that too. But before you even create the story, you got to understand, what type of story do we need to tell? And where is my customer? What problem am I having getting them from where they are to where I want them to go? And obviously you ultimately want them to become that loyal champion, but you're not going to get them there in one leap. So what's the journey that you need to have them on, and what's the right content to guide them on that next step of the journey? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Oh, Nikolai, you're here?
Thank you.
All right. Look at that guy. I know that guy. Good looking guy too. All right. And if you need to learn, okay, Nikolai Bador, for those of you that don't know, he is not just local legend, and I'm not overstating that, but he is a national legend when it comes to sales. He is the founder of Coffee and Closers and Closers Media, and Coffee and Closers is an award-winning sales event, podcast, etc. So if you need to learn anything about sales, coffeeclosers.com, I believe. Nikolai, correct that if I'm wrong. And or Closers Media. Forgive me. Nikolai can put it into the chat room. But yeah, sales expert, very much. Okay. So you know what we could do, because now we only have 5 minutes left, and I don't have enough time for the rest of my deck here. So what I was going to do is look at top of funnel content and what makes that good, middle funnel content, which would be like the testimonials or event videos, or stuff like that, and what makes that work, and then tutorials. We have a unique case study where we were embedded with a company called Park Tool, a bike tool company based here in St. Paul, and they. Sorry, I'm looking at the chat room while talking. I can't multitask at all. And we created these tutorials that have millions and millions of views. And those tutorials help people to, understand how to use the park tools, but they also have become the top tutorials for any bike enthusiast on how to learn how to adjust their rear derailleur, for example, the shifter, the gears. And what happens is those, and Park Tool was foresighted enough where they put money and budget behind tutorials, behind demo videos. And so they're really highly produced. They look really good. And so if you're going to look for on YouTube where there's going to be dozens, maybe even hundreds of options for how to do something on your bike, you end up picking that one because it's the best. And it ends up being a top of funnel piece because now people around the world are looking at Park Tool tutorials, and now they're getting orders from around the world. And so that's another unique case where, like, if you can make the best content in an area that's overcrowded, maybe people will choose yours, and then that's a way to build the brand as well. I can't say I digress because that's part of my deck, but I'm losing the opportunity now, Megan and Jason, to get with you too. So, Megan, one possibility to answer your question is, let me go to this particular slide and talk about testimonial videos. The testimonial videos can be a powerful way to basically have your customers sell for you and your customers answer questions that your prospects and leads would have. And there's just a lot of trust that's built because it's not you, tooting your own horn. It's someone else tooting it for you. But there's some keys to doing them really well. And one of the top keys, and I've worked with a lot of marketing managers at big companies that want to tell too much in a testimonial. And so they should be short. No one wants to consume long content these days. We have way too many options for consuming content. And a lot of people want to try and fit 3.5 minutes worth of content into a testimonial video. And in my personal opinion, you can say a lot in 90 seconds. Try and keep it to 90 seconds and just be concise. Say the very few key points that matter. Brevity is key. And so obviously, you're going to need to think about that story progression then very thoughtfully and, identify the problem, then show the solution and how that solution really saved the day at whatever company you're highlighting or whatever individual you're highlighting, and how that your solution just made their life so much better despite the risk that they might have taken by taking upon your solution. For example, this guy, Warren Spooner here, he's at a Lexus dealership down in Augusta, Georgia, and they adopted this really expensive oil and fluid management system, this top of the line, cloud connected, tracking every ounce of oil and connecting it to the individual who dispensed the oil and ordering, tracking inventory, et cetera, et cetera. And it's this expensive solution. And it was a risk to get this versus the competitors because it cost a whole lot more. But by the end of the video, this guy's kind of excitingly grinning, and he can't kind of hold in the excitement, talking about how we saved a lot of money. He's got this, kind of grizzly voice, this southern drawl that I can't do. And, he talks about how they, by the end of the video, he's talking about how they used to have lost month after month, but now they got a surplus. So at the end of the day, it's paying for itself. And he's like really proud because this was his baby. And so that's going to be the key video is you might not have the crying mother, but you can at least have the guy or gal who's going to be really passionate about this, even if they're an engineer. If you can pull out the humanity behind the decision, if you can show that this mattered to them, then that's going to cause your audience to feel that, and they're going to trust you that much more. And so with that, we're out of time. So any other quick questions? I don't know. I think we can go to
okay.
Go ahead, Jason.
Will we be able to get a copy of the deck you prepared, like since where I can send your email?
Oh yeah, great. So let's do this. Here, let me my email in the chat room. Hold on. And then, yeah, shoot me an email. And, you know, I'd be happy to just follow up on a call with anyone that wanted to. And just finish this out, like, with time, you know?
Yeah. And do you have any, maybe it's contained in your deck as well, but do you have any examples of companies that do great storytelling for their customers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of obvious ones, you know, Nike, but there's plenty. Yeah, we could dig some of that up for you too.
And I have one more. I don't know if I can ask this. I have one more question.
Of course.
Okay, and this is in terms of like producing content, right? So currently I'm working on MVP for my product, and it's just making like educating consumers on various parts of their cities and whatnot. So what I do right now, as far as video, as far as content, is I use like my laptop, and I record it via PowerPoint, and I have a video for me in the corner, right? But if I wanted to make it more of a high quality type of product, is there any like workflow or product that you know of that is just as flexible as that?
There's this whole world of iPhone apps that I'm not connected to. I see other people doing. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. You can do that now. But I'm working in the higher end workflow, the workflow that you would not want to take the time to learn. So. Yeah. To be honest, you're doing just as well doing a Google search on that. But there are some really, but do it. Like whether you're on iPhone or Android, there are powerful solutions for doing some pretty cool. Like I have clients that I've provided content for, and I'm seeing what they're creating with that content. I'm like, oh, so you're in After Effects now? Like, nope. There was some app on the iPhone. I don't remember what it was. But yeah. All right. So yes, please feel free to reach out, and we can follow up one-on-one over the phone or Zoom or whatever. But here to help. All right. I think that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right.
Thank you, Eric.
Appreciate you guys. Humbled that you would take the time.